The facts of the matter have been that we have already delivered around 3 times what the state has delivered into that state.
That doesn't help those workers now. That doesn't help them now. Why haven't you planned for this? Even if you do stand up some sort of JobKeeper style scheme, it's going to take time for those people to get money. They're not being paid.
Well, as you know, there are a series of supports, including our welfare system, Sam, which applies in terms of job seeker. And what we have done is we've removed the waiting period. We've also removed the mutual obligation requirements as they apply in Victoria. But the budget, where we saw $41 billion in additional economic support provided in the budget, was based on an assumption that there would be further outbreaks across the country. The pandemic is very much with us. And so the assumptions were based on the need to continue to provide support to the economy.
Treasurer, on consumption, you've said today how delighted you are with consumption. It's 0.7, which is a big contributor to your 1.8% growth. Of that consumption, 2/3 has come from Victorians dipping into their own pocket. Shouldn't you now dip into your pocket as thanks to them, given that the government is following medical advice to extend the lockdown?
Well, what we did see is we saw, other than the Northern Territory, strong numbers across the states. Queensland was the lowest of the states, but we saw strong growth, and particularly led by WA, I have to add. And we also saw strong growth coming out of Victoria. It wasn't 2/3 of the overall number. What we have seen in terms of consumption was up by 1.2%, Andrew, and consumption it did, as you said, contributed 0.7% to the overall GDP. But we saw strong growth in New South Wales, strong growth in Western Australia, and across the other states. But our support to Victoria has helped deliver the continued economic recovery across the country. Our support to Victoria has been on the highest on a per capita basis anywhere across the country. I noticed that Sam wrote about New South Wales getting marginally more JobKeeper payments than Victoria. But the key indicator is to look at on a per capita basis to compare the sizes of their economies and the number of people in work. And the number of people in work and the number of people who received it in Victoria was a higher proportion than we saw across other states. So our support for Victoria has been there. This is a very difficult time for Victorian businesses and Victorian families with the extension of the lockdown. These are decisions that the Victorian government makes. It's not for me to question the medical advice.
In that answer, in just what you said then, you said there's an alternative to what they're doing now. Do you believe there's an alternative to Victoria extending this lockdown?
Again, it's not for me as Treasurer to question their medical advice.
You just did, didn't you?
No, what I've said is our health officials will talk to their health officials to understand the decisions that they've taken. I mean, as you know, Andrew, the way the lockdowns have worked is that it's the state government that decides which schools are open, which years of the schools are going to. It's the state government that decides which regional areas are subject to which conditions. It's a state government that decides whether self-employed people can work or whether it's others on particular industries and sites can work. I mean, I noticed what they've been saying out of Mildura, a regional city of more than 50,000, Victoria, more than 500 kilometres from Melbourne. They haven't had a case, as I understand it, for 13 months, yet they were subject to the same restrictions over the course of the last week. Now, there's some of the questions Victorians are asking, but they're not for me to provide the answer. That's for the Victorian government. Our health officials will speak to their health officials, and most importantly, our Prime Minister will speak to their acting Premier, and I will speak to their Treasurer.
When you speak to the Treasurer, you said in answer to Sam's question that obviously the states have the same ability you have to borrow and to support the state, but you said you'll consider that request. So what is in the realms of consideration? What sort of support will you consider for Victoria? That's additional to what's available through the transfer system and welfare.
Well, Mark, I know you would like me to preempt that consideration. I haven't even yet heard or seen the request from Victoria. So I will talk to Tim Pallas. I have a constructive relationship with him, despite his comments in recent days. We all have a sense of humour about that. But I will speak to him. The Prime Minister will speak to James Merlino. Our health officials will talk, and we'll consider that in due course. Sorry, Greg.